Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Unfound program, Unfound Now. I am, of course, the host of Unfound, the Missing Persons program. I'm Ed Densel. The first episode of Unfound Now came out, I guess, about a month ago, where we I talked about the disappearance of Linda Stoltfus. Unfortunately, she is still missing, but within the last week, a man has been brought into custody for her disappearance. His name is Justo Smoker. If you'd like to hear more about that disappearance and what I have to say about it, go to the first Unfound Now episode, or you can go to the Unfound Live Show I do here on YouTube just a couple days ago on July 15th, where I spoke at length about what I think it means regarding Justo Smoker being brought into custody. Now today, on this recording, which I'm doing on July 17th, 2020, I'm going to be talking about the disappearance of Erika Lloyd, a woman who lived in Walnut Creek, California, which let's just say it's in Northern California. And her car was eventually found in what you would call Southern California, near 29 Palms, near Joshua Tree in California. I will tell you that I have a little bit of a familiarity with that area because I had a friend of mine who was on the Marine base down there back in the late 1990s. I've been through that area. It's some of the most desolate part of the 48 states of the United States. I drove from Las Vegas and took all these back roads down through a place called Amboy to get to 29 Palms. Very desolate part of, once again, the lower 48 states. Just some disclaimers before I talk about all of this. Please understand that I only know about this disappearance. What I know about it is just what I've read and the information that I've been able to gather. I've not talked to any investigators working on her disappearance. I've not spoken to anybody in the family. I've not spoken to any of her friends. What I've done to this point is read several articles about her disappearance. I've talked to a couple people who have been following her disappearance since it happened on June 15th of 2020. I've talked to my assistants about it, just throwing some ideas back and forth, getting their impressions about the facts that are out there. I've gone to Web Sleuths because although I don't go there very often these days, it sometimes is good to go there because sometimes you do get maybe some inside information, if you can believe it, about a disappearance that you might not read anywhere else. I can tell you in this particular circumstance with Erika, it wasn't that helpful, but I did do that. Just going around, I've actually watched a couple different YouTube videos regarding her disappearance as well. But I just want to make clear that although I do interview friends and family of missing people for the program Unfound, in this particular case with Unfound Now, I'm just going off of the information that is out there in the public regarding the disappearance. I have no inside knowledge, unlike when I do the Unfound episodes, and we've covered about 175 disappearances now. Now, the purposes of Unfound Now is to educate all of you. This is not something to be any sensationalism or anything else. We at Unfound believe if the public can get better at analyzing disappearances, that more disappearances will get solved. And so what I will be doing here is showing you the techniques that we use, that I use, or some of my assistants use, in talking to family members and them talking about their missing loved ones. Also, friends of missing people, of course, those disappearances that end up getting featured on the program. So a lot of what you're going to be seeing here are things that go on behind the scenes of Unfound that maybe aren't so obvious. So I will be going through the facts of her disappearance, just pointing out some things I observe, just asking some questions that maybe don't have answers right now. That's all I'm going to be doing. I'm not going to be doing a lot of theorizing or anything like that. So let's just get right into this. First of all, let me, if you see me looking off this direction, it's because that's where my notes are. I'm not doing this off the top of my head. She was last seen on June 14th, 2020, which is a little over a month ago. Once again, I'm recording this on July 17th, 2020. So a little over a month ago, she was last seen in the Walnut Creek, California area. However, the next morning, once again, according to public reports, she talked to some of her family on the East Coast. So she's on the West Coast, they're on the East Coast. And in these articles that I've read, it says that she spoke to family in the morning. Now, what isn't clear to me is was it morning in the East Coast or was it morning in the West Coast? Of course, if it was morning in the East Coast, then it was really early morning in the West Coast. So I think that even something like that can leave itself up to interpretation. All right, I think that time of when they actually spoke to her needs to be nailed down. I'm sure it has been by this time, but in public reports, it's not been. It just says in the morning. Now, what would be important to me if I was talking to a family for the first time would be, you spoke to her on Monday morning. Was that common? Moreover, did she call you or did you call her? And if she normally called you on Monday mornings, how long did those conversations usually go and what were the topics? Was there anything about that conversation on that June 15th that seemed odd to you? Other than where she said she was going or anything else, just anything odd compared to all the other conversations that you had ever had with Erika. Now, so it's important to know, I think, who called who or who called whom. Was she on the road? And this will become important in a little bit. Was the family's impression, was she at home? Was she in her car? You should be able to tell that by how her voice sounds, even with the way we could talk in our cars today. It almost sounds like we're at home, but many times you can tell whether a person's in their car or not. Or did she say she was parked somewhere? Was she outside a Walmart or a 7-Eleven or a gas station or something like that? I think this is also very important. It's important to know where they thought she was when they were talking to her on that Monday morning. Could she have already been? I mean, is it possible that she could have already been in the Joshua Tree area? Did she drive all night? Now, I think by this time they would have looked at her cell phone records, the pinging and everything else to maybe try to determine that. But if they haven't, they should, because I think that's fairly important. We need to know where she was when she spoke to her family. And if they asked where she was, frankly, did they think she was telling the truth? Was she evasive regarding that question? If she said, Mom, I'm at home, but she's in her car and it sounds like she's driving somewhere, then obviously that might be seen as a lie. Did anything like that pop up? So that's what I have to say about Monday morning as far as that phone call. Now, moving to the Monday afternoon into the evening, and we'll just go right down to Joshua Tree National Park, kind of near 29 Palms, California. You have to realize that those two areas are not close. They're separated by almost 500 miles, and Google says it would take 7.5 hours to drive that, but you also have to figure in traffic. You have to figure in maybe going to the bathroom. I've driven to Pennsylvania several times, so I know all about that, but that's like a 16, 17-hour drive. Could she have gotten gas? Given the kind of car that she had, she could have driven the whole way without getting any gas, but that's something to think about. So let's just say she took 8.5 hours to drive to get from Walnut Creek, California, to where the car was eventually found vandalized. Now, this is very important, and this goes back to what I mentioned about knowing where she was. Because if she was still at home when she spoke on Monday morning in Walnut Creek, California, let's just say it was 8 a.m. California time, she wouldn't have gotten to Joshua Tree until like maybe 5 p.m. California time, Pacific time. And then on top of that, you have to remember what happened later that evening of that same day of June 15th. A law enforcement officer came in there, saw her car vandalized. What it means is that there's a very, very small window in which that car could have been vandalized if she was still at home when she talked to her family that morning. Say she gets there at 5, say the police officer comes there by 8. That means it's like a 3-hour window of chance for that vandalism. We have to keep that in mind. Now, if she was driving, already on the road somewhere, then of course that window opens. If she was already in Joshua Tree when she talked to her family on Monday morning, then of course the window is wide open, 12 hours or whatever else. That's why it's important to determine where she was when she had that conversation on Monday morning. And I also understand that there was maybe a discrepancy. She said she was going to go to Big Sur. I think the overall feeling I get is everybody is surprised that she ended up in Southern California. Of course, that's part of the disappearance issue. The car was found vandalized. All the windows were smashed. The tires were not slashed. And we'll come to that later. It doesn't, once again, as far as information, none of the panels of the car were kicked in, but the dash inside the vehicle was damaged. So once again, the car must have been vandalized as soon as she got there, or it was vandalized there, or it was vandalized somewhere else. I don't see somebody driving a car that's that vandalized. So I think it makes sense that it was vandalized where it was found. So 479 miles, almost 500 miles from Northern California to Southern California. Some of the questions, though, that I have is that if she was at home on Monday night or Monday morning when she made that call, are we then to believe that she drove that entire way and never called or never texted anybody? We don't know. There's no public information regarding that, to my knowledge. And even if she was already in Joshua Tree on Monday morning when she talked to her family, are we then saying that she never talked to anybody or texted anybody after that conversation on that morning? Is that what we're saying? I realize that maybe cell phone service may be a little spotty, but it's something that I think does stick in my mind. Moreover, did anybody try calling her or texting her on Monday and had no luck reaching her? Did it go straight to voicemail, for example? So we move up to Monday night. The cop comes around again. The car is gone. So what it means is that even though the car was vandalized, that it was drivable. Even though the windows were kicked in, the dash was messed up, it was drivable. And then it was found, of course, the next day. I wouldn't say very far away, a few miles away. But the car was drivable. And what is also noteworthy is that Erika never called the vandalism in. So it puts into question whether she moved the car herself. She never made an attempt to call anybody, even if she didn't flag anybody down after her car. She could have, if it was drivable, she could have gone out to the main road and just waited there. Maybe that's what she did, but my impression is that once you find your car vandalized, you're going to try to call somebody. But once again, I don't know the cell phone reception in the area. What it also says is when that cop showed up and saw the car vandalized on Monday evening, is that somebody had the keys. What I'd want to know is it possible that the keys were in the car? If the keys were still in the car, even though the car was vandalized, then anybody could have driven it over there. Whereas if the keys weren't in the car, I think that's something that a police officer would check. Then somebody else had them and then came back to the car after he left with the keys. So We have to think about that. Tuesday, of course, then it was found. The car was found a few miles down the road, down a dirt road, pointed toward the main road, and that's how this disappearance got started. What I want to know is, when they found the car, were the keys in it? Have they found the keys to the car once the car was found and they towed it away? Moreover, was anything of Erika's in it? Did it look like anything had been stolen? Did they open up the trunk? Was there anything that maybe should have been in there that wasn't? Now, our experience with Unfound is we have covered many disappearances where people go missing and their cars end up somewhere. I have a list right here. Robin Abrams, Brandy Wells, Rebecca Henderson, Greg Brooks, Eric Alvarado. Several disappearances where the people go missing and their cars aren't where they are supposed to be. They're just in some random place. And some of these cars, and we have also covered some disappearances where the person and the car go missing and the car is never found. Jeff Joseph, to name one. Eric Franks is another one from Michigan, where disappearances where the cars are never found. Now, the problem with that, once again, my assessment in thinking about Unfound's own disappearances that are like Erika's, is that it's kind of a 50-50 proposition. My impression is that when we have disappearances where cars end up in places that they probably shouldn't be, I think it's a 50-50 proposition, meaning half of the time we think that the missing person put it there. The other half of the time we believe somebody else put it there, of course, then bringing in the idea that maybe foul play occurred. So I'm not sure that, you can lean either way when comparing Unfound's disappearances with Erika's and come to a solid conclusion whether she parked the car there and it got vandalized, or she parked the car in this other area and where it was eventually found and towed away. It's somewhat 50-50, and you certainly have to know more about the disappearance to, whatever choice you really want to pick. And I don't think that at this point I have enough facts to determine that. So I would say it's 50-50 whether Erika left the car where it was eventually found and towed away. 50% chance she did it, 50% chance somebody else did it. That doesn't mean that foul play is involved or anything else. In fact, it all depends on the circumstances of what was going on with the person at the time to determine whether he or she left her own car somewhere or he or she didn't leave their car there. Were they on drugs? Were they suicidal? What was going on in their life? Did they have an ex that was after them? A whole host of factors have to be considered when we start talking about cars being what we might call ditched. The issue, though, having said all that, factually, it very well could be that her disappearance has nothing to do with the vandalism of her car. I know that makes sense, and certainly we can talk about that and people can discuss that, but factually, at least publicly, the facts that are out there, it very well could be that Eric showed up at Joshua Tree, went out into the desert with her camping equipment, and maybe she's still up there, and of course something bad happened, and then somebody else came along, vandalized her car, they saw the cops coming, got out of there. When the cop left, they came back, drove the car somewhere, and it has nothing to do with Erika's disappearance. Of course, that still means something happened to Erika, meaning that it's been a month. But it's very possible, factually, that whoever vandalized her car had nothing to do with her disappearance. I think that's very, very important to understand with this. Once again, factually, I know logically it would seem that the two are connected. But from an evidence point of view, there's nothing to connect one to the other, at least to my knowledge, at this point. So some of the big questions that I have now, having talked about these facts, is, and I'm just going to be looking over to my notes here. If someone abducted Erika in Northern California, what are the odds that the person would take Erika's car to a place where people go camping? Being that she told her family she was going camping, what are the odds that somebody would abduct her in Northern California, drive all that way to then take her to a place where people go camping? What are the odds of that? Because that person wouldn't have known that Erika was going camping, right? Say she left Walnut Creek, went to get gas, somebody abducted her, and with her, I don't want to get morbid here, but her in the car somewhere, that person drives her car from Walnut Creek the whole way down to the Joshua Tree, 29 Palms area. How would that guy know, or people know, that she was going camping? They wouldn't. So that sticks in my head. And even if Erika told the abductor that, and saying, they were having a conversation, I'm going camping, and then after that, this guy or people did something to her, what would cause these people to then go along with what she was planning to do herself? Especially given that the person, these people would have driven 8 hours or over, for almost 500 miles to do that. So moving on to the next batch of questions. If someone abducted her, why vandalize her car as well? Doing that only brings attention to the car. Keeping it nice allows it for it to sit unnoticed for a lot longer. And I think that's why, at least in Unfound's disappearances, of course, we covered disappearances that are years, if not decades old. We've never covered a case where the car was as damaged as this one. We've had a few where things were strewn outside of it. I think of Rebecca Henderson's car, where some of her stuff was thrown on the ground beside it. But the car was not vandalized. We say vandalized. Tires slashed, windows damaged, the interior ripped out. I don't think we've had any disappearances like that at all. So we have to think about that. Why was the car vandalized? Why was that so important if somebody did do something to Erika? Moving on to this. If Erika came back from a camping site to find someone vandalizing her car, where is the 911 call? Maybe there's no cell phone reception. Maybe. Moreover, what are the odds that the cop pulled in on that Monday evening to find the car vandalized but not see anyone around who did it, since seemingly Erika wasn't around either? He pulled in there and there was nobody there, just the car that was vandalized. What are the odds that he would pull in and the people who vandalized it weren't there? And keep in mind, it very well could have been a very, very small window of opportunity. Now to this, since she wasn't a camper, and I read that people were surprised, her family was surprised that she said she was going camping. Since she wasn't a camper, did she buy camping equipment? Check her credit cards. See if she ever bought any equipment ever. Because if there's no proof she did, then I'm telling you, she didn't go camping. She might have said she was going camping, but since she's not a camper, there's no proof that she bought a lantern or a flashlight or a tent or a sleeping bag or anything else that you would use to go camping, then I have to say that I'm somewhat doubtful that she did go camping. And maybe she was going to get that stuff when she got abducted. Very possible. No, and remember, not only wasn't she found during these searches that they did, her camping equipment wasn't either. So they're out there in the desert looking for her. They didn't find any of her stuff either. Have to keep that in mind. Maybe it got stolen. My assessment of this, and this is going to take us to the end of this, the second edition of Unfound Now regarding the disappearance of Erika Lloyd. My assessment, this disappearance on the surface certainly looks like an abduction. And it's certainly possible that Erika was attacked as soon as she got to Joshua Tree. She pulls in, there's some people there, she gets out, and something happens. Certainly possible. It's also possible that she pulled in, went out into the desert or wherever to see where she was going to camp, came back, there were people there, something happened. Certainly possible. No, there are no facts that contradict that. Yet, if we were to think an abduction happened, we must square that with the fact that she wasn't a camper and drove 8.5 hours to go camping. We have to square that somehow. If it was something that she did much more often, something that she was really, really into, and I don't know what those interests were, certainly. I'm into disc golf, but I don't think that I would randomly drive 8.5 hours just to go play disc golf. But that's me. She might have wanted to really do this for the first time, heard about Joshua Tree, decided to do that, but somehow that has to be squared. That has to make more rational sense. Once again, is there any proof she ever bought any camping equipment? What was the other thing that's be important to me is looking at the car, how much gas was in it. If it was very low on gas, then I think that we can take for granted that she drove the whole way without getting gas. However, if it had half a tank, then surely she had to have gotten gas somewhere on the trip, and it might be worth somebody's while to go see where she could have gotten that gas. Once again, if they have access to her credit card statement, that might help, and find the video of that if they did that. I'm not saying they haven't done that. They probably have done that, but it's something that occurs to me. To find out if she was alone or not. I think that's very important. And if the video shows that she was alone on the trip and getting gas by herself, that's what the video shows, then certainly it was something that happened once she got to Joshua Tree. Now, of course, if it turns out that somebody else was using her card, then something that happened in Walnut Creek happened. I'm disturbed. Once again, the way I understand this, and using the phrase once again for about the 100th time, that it seems during this whole time that she didn't talk or text with anybody. If we are to believe that she was in Walnut Creek on Monday morning, she went, according to the reports, did she really go the whole way to Southern California without talking to anybody? Maybe she did, and it's just not out there. It would seem to me, though, that they would put that information out there if it was true, if there was proof that she talked to people. Because, as I write here, ceasing of phone use is as big an indicator of something being wrong as there is in 21st century disappearances. There is no better indicator of when a disappearance happened than when a person stops using his or her phone. There is no other. That is number one. Number one. I could give you example after example after example. This is also the reason that people suspects who are involved in disappearances and have killed missing people sometimes try to portray that the person is still alive by using the phone to text people saying, "Oh, I'm okay," when really the person who owns the phone is already deceased. There are bad people out there who know this, so they try to make it seem like the person is still alive. So cell phone usage, number one indicator of when, or a ceasing of cell phone usage is the number one indicator of when a disappearance happens in the 21st century. Something else that bothers me, and this could take us in a different direction, is that I'm not going to make much about the Facebook account. I know some other people have, but I think that her Facebook account was deleted several weeks before she disappeared. What I'm more bothered by is that she has an Instagram account that I visited, and she was using Instagram at least one picture every day. Every day. And then it stopped on June 6th. And in fact, it was a picture about being worried about July coming, given everything all the stuff that's going on right now. She stopped using her Instagram account. There was steady usage all that time. And all of a sudden, she stopped posting anything on June 6th. And that she never used it before she disappeared. So 9 days, something like that, over a week. Steady use, and then nothing. And then she disappears 9 days after that. Social media use is also a very good indicator. If a pattern changes, usually means something is going on in that person's life. Sometimes, not all the time. Maybe she had reasons. I don't know, but it's certainly something to look into of why she stopped using her Instagram account 9 days before she disappeared. And in addition, she's driving from Northern California to Southern California, never took any pictures, never took a picture once she got to Joshua Tree, never took a picture of like the sign or anything like that. She didn't do any of that. That's how people usually use their Instagram account. Erika did admit being stressed out before she disappeared that morning, on that Monday morning. And something that should absolutely be done is forensics should be done on her car. I think that I can safely say if there are no what we would call foreign fingerprints on it, fingerprints that cannot be identified, of course hers is going to be in there, maybe some of her friends. I think she had her children. I think she had a son. His fingerprints would be in there. But if they cannot find any foreign fingerprints that cannot be identified in that car, then I have to tell you that I'm going to be inclined to believe that Erika vandalized her own car. I don't know because somebody's not going to vandalize a car and then wipe it down. So I'm hoping that the police have done that by this time. So that is my assessment. I'm not going to get into any theories about what all of this means. There are no facts that contradict the idea that she was abducted and something happened. Nothing contradicting that at all. However, there are other things about her social media usage, her phone usage, that could possibly take us in another direction as well. And that's it. Thank you for watching this second episode of Unfound Now. You can find Unfound on Facebook, the discussion group, and the page. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We do the live show on Wednesday nights right here on this YouTube channel, 9 p.m. Eastern. And the episodes come out every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And you can find that on Podomatic, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, a variety of podcast platforms. So I thank you for watching the Unfound Now episode where we talked about the disappearance of Erika Lloyd. Thanks.